Let's talk about power. Not just any power, but how a tool of mercy, the pardon, can be twisted into a weapon, a scepter.
And we have to get one thing straight from the start. This isn't about left versus right. The real issue here is much deeper. It's about what happens when personal loyalty starts to matter more than the rule of law.
And this whole thing isn't some abstract theory. It kicks off with a bombshell report from the Wall Street Journal. The claim that Donald Trump made a promise, a blanket pardon for anyone inside a 200-foot radius of the Oval Office for any crimes they might commit while serving him.
So you have to ask yourself, what's the real purpose of a promise like that? Is it about mercy, or is it something else entirely? A strategy? What is it actually designed to do?
Well, to really get it, you have to look at this through a specific lens. We have to open up the authoritarian's playbook and look at the cold, hard logic of how power works.
The political theorist John Mearsheimer has a pretty stark view on this. He says that in any system where there's no referee, no ultimate authority to enforce the rules, there's only one thing that matters for survival: maximizing your own power. Everything else becomes secondary.
And that's where the pardon gets completely reframed. It stops being about forgiveness for something someone already did. Instead, it becomes what this analysis calls an authorization of impunity. Think of it like a permission slip for future crimes. It's a way to buy absolute, unbreakable loyalty.
This strategy follows a brutally simple three-step process. First, you go after accountability. You target the very systems designed to keep you in check. Second, you turn the pardon into a weapon, erasing consequences. And the result of that? Step 3, you get absolute, unquestioning loyalty.
Now, the psychological effect here is, well, it's a trap. See, once you take away the fear of getting caught, of facing consequences, the whole machine of government doesn't just bend the rules. It starts to accelerate toward lawlessness. Things that were once completely unthinkable start to seem normal.
The scary part? This isn't a new playbook. Not at all. History gives us some chillingly clear examples of this exact pattern playing out before.
Let's look back to the 1920s. Benito Mussolini gave sweeping pardons to his black shirts, the violent thugs who put him in power. Their violence was rewarded. Fast forward less than a decade, and Adolf Hitler does the same thing. He pardons his SA brown shirts for actual murder. In both cases, the message was crystal clear: loyalty to me is the only law that counts. And in both cases, democracy didn't survive.
And the end result was catastrophic. As this analysis puts it, once you tear down accountability and replace it with personal loyalty, you get absolute control. The machine, once it gets going, is almost impossible to stop.
So that brings this historical pattern crashing right into our world today. The question isn't, could something like this happen? The question becomes, is it happening right now?
And here's the crucial link. That Wall Street Journal report isn't just another headline. The argument is that it shows Donald Trump using the very same strategy, wielding the promise of a pardon not to forgive past wrongs, but to pre-authorize future actions and guarantee total obedience.
So what does that actually mean? Well, the immediate consequences are huge. The pardon power basically becomes a shield for anyone loyal. Any order, whether it's legal or not, suddenly comes with its own insurance policy. For the people inside that shield, the personal cost of saying no becomes astronomical. And entire institutions, like the Department of Justice, risk becoming nothing more than a friendly suggestion.
This kicks off a domino effect, a series of dangerous shifts. First, breaking the law can become an unspoken but official policy. That leads to the second shift. The entire rule of law starts to crack under the strain. And the final shift? Democracy doesn't just vanish in a flash. It dies a slow death, piece by piece.
All of this leaves the system teetering at a crossroads. We're facing a future that is completely unresolved, with what looks like 3 very different paths forward.
Okay, so let's break down these 3 paths. Path 1 is pushback. This is where state courts and other institutions resist, prosecuting crimes that a federal pardon can't touch. Path 2 is collapse. Here, the federal system just gives in, pardons become a routine tool of power, and democracy becomes a hollow shell. And then there's Path 3, the new normal. This is where raw power wins, and maybe the Supreme Court even gives its blessing, making this a permanent part of how the presidency works. When you boil it all down, the warning from this analysis is incredibly simple and incredibly final. When the law becomes optional for the people at the top, freedom becomes conditional for everybody else. It stops being a right and becomes a privilege. granted at the whim of a leader. And that leaves us with one last, very uncomfortable question. Looking at the playbook, the historical parallels, and the possible futures, which one of these paths do you think we're already on?